The economy has been top of mind for voters throughout the election. Both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, they've proposed very different ideas of how to create jobs, keep jobs here in the U.S. As business leaders, are you satisfied with what you're hearing from either candidate?
I think not atypical. Before the actual final campaign starts, usually you don't hear from candidates on economic policies. They tend to be more heavily oriented towards social issues, and that's what you've heard today. What we do need to hear about is whoever is president, how are they going to deal with the federal budget? The number one issue facing the country today is the inability to go forward on the federal spending basis that we are today. And I'm talking about both revenues and spending.
What can the next administration do to help businesses grow?
We hear this from clients every day. We have made it very, very difficult in the last 8 to 16 years to help companies grow. We've put impediments in at every step of the way. It's more expensive to have labor. It's more expensive to run a business because of regulatory schemes, some of which are of dubious value. There's sometimes the best thing to do is do no harm. We have to now affirmatively get rid of some of the harms if we want job growth. We just have not had job growth in the United States in the last 8 years. It just has not existed, and there's a reason for that.
Well, and some of the impediments people always point to are financial regulations. As the CEO of KeyCorp, Donald Trump's talking about repealing Dodd-Frank altogether. Hillary Clinton's talking about adding to it. What would actually move the needle for banks and financial services companies in terms of regulations? Do we need to be adding to them? Do we need to be repealing them?
I think as an industry, we have found our way in this regulatory regime, but I do think if there was an opportunity for balance, and I concur with the need post the financial crisis that there was a need for heightened regulations for the industry that was at the kind of the epicenter of some of what happened. But I think in many cases what we're hearing from clients and would be applicable to our industry is perhaps a pendulum that is extended, and is there more balance that can be both the safeguards that are intended but also allow for more innovation, more jobs, and more growth.
Right. And Sandy, you've been a favorite target of Donald Trump's on the campaign trail. He's accused Eaton of moving jobs to Mexico, critical of companies that have moved their headquarters abroad to tax havens. What's the counter to that? What do you have to say to that?
I think the counter is really very easy from an economic point of view. We've had 8 years now where we've been growing at about 2%. It's very hard to find periods of time in the country's history where we've grown that slowly. The social ill-ease which has grown from that, with lower incomes for individuals, harder to start new businesses. That's part of the great angst we're finding in this country today. There are a couple of very important economic solutions to the problem we find ourselves in. Number one, our tax policy. I think most people agree, both on a personal and a corporate basis, is obtuse, to put it lightly. Need a fundamental reform. Our education policy needs a far bigger emphasis on vocational education today. It's beginning, but it's not enough. And train people for their next job, not the last job.
Yeah,
Third,
that's a really
trade, which is typically a barb from both parties this time of year. If you want to be able to grow as part of the world economy that's growing faster than ourselves, to cut the U.S. off from global trade opportunities, we are only 25% of the world's GDP. We're way less than in terms of population, puts us in a bad position. So again, get back to the basic economics that really grow things. Back to Beth, the question you posed to Beth, prolonged low interest rates are very tough on a population. Seniors can't save, people don't feel they should save, and if you look at what it's doing to small business, it's very tough on small business as well.
It's been making it very tough. You've been nodding your head. Do you have anything to add to that list?
No, I agree, and particularly with respect to education, there's been the tone at the top for the last 20 or 30 years is you have to get a 4-year degree, you have to go on and so forth. So we're telling people to go out and get a 4-year degree, incur $100,000 of debt, and then have them train for nothing. Meanwhile, in northern Ohio, and you hear it again every day from our clients, there's thousands of jobs that go unfilled in the various vocations. They can't find welders, for example.
We found that too, that again, this is a regional economy thing, but manufacturing is still 20% of the economy in Northeast Ohio, and it's migrated to very much a technological-based, skill-based, high-tech manufacturing, and those jobs pay very well, and they are having a very hard time. Number one thing we hear from our clients is find qualified people who want to do that kind of work.
Yeah, and Supreme Court justices, last but not least, is a very, very big issue in this election. You work with a lot of companies. You were talking about this earlier. Why is it such a critical piece of the 2016 election?
Well, as we've seen, the Supreme Court can have an enormous impact on business, labor rules, regulatory schemes, and I think business is looking at the next president and worried about the nature of some of the nominees because they will further hold up legislation that perhaps 20 or 30 or 40 years ago would be deemed unconstitutional as an overreach. Businesses are very concerned about that. It's a big issue.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us in Cleveland, and best of luck with the rest of the week.
Thanks very much.